what's underground near your house, how to navigate the state's new map of oil and gas flow lines. Another piece of old Denver is closer to being washed away by development.
It's a wave that's hard to push against.
Coloradans' key roles in the impeachment trial today. Bike advocates admit they know why so many drivers don't like them. They're listening, as well as talking. And an idea. What if drug companies had to offer some kind of justification before jacking up prices? Just a thought. One of many. On Next. The national news media just want to talk about Derek Jeter today. Let me tell you the story about a kid from Maple Ridge, a most Canadian-sounding place. It's a suburb of Vancouver, British Columbia. That kid pursued the most Canadian of dreams, to someday play professional hockey. But you know, dreams are rarely pursued in straight lines. This kid plays ice hockey, he plays street hockey, and he was good. But good still needs to buy a ticket to see great play out on the ice. That young man worked hard, but the NHL didn't come calling for him. It was his brother, Kerry, who was drafted by the Canadiens. Now, lucky for Kerry's little brother, Larry, that he was also decent at baseball. Not a very Canadian sport. So un-Canadian, in fact, that Major League Baseball teams weren't even allowed to draft Canadian players at that time. But Larry caught on with a team of cast-off rookie minor leaguers, the Utica Blue Sox. And then it was the Burlington Expos, eventually the Big League Expos, and then on to the Colorado Rockies, where Larry Walker, the wannabe hockey goalie, put up Hall of Fame-worthy stats that were finally honored today with Larry Walker's selection for the Baseball Hall of Fame. A long and winding path across ice and outfields from Maple Ridge to Cooperstown. Transparency. We talk about it often here. Colorado's oil and gas industry has been forced into a new layer of transparency, one that lets us look beneath our feet and our homes and our schools. Our Marshall Zellinger has been exploring the new online mapping tool that lets us see what is buried beneath. And Marshall, this is not super intuitive to use.
Because it's the state, right? No, look at, there's all these boxes in white over on the side. There's a lot of dots right here in the center of the map. The system's a bit slow, so I've already cheated it a bit. We'll take you through this through the story, but when you click on the new flow line checkbox, you'll see what popped up. All those dots is what was once unknown. There are now lines where oil and gas pipes are located underground.
This is available now on our interactive map for the public. When we first zoom in, it's somewhat overwhelming, the amount of information.
It's a map that connects the dots. For the first time in Colorado, oil and gas operators are required to show their work.
This is what we're asking oil and gas companies to provide us, is surveyed line data, which actually shows the true path of a flow line in the ground. The pipe itself, where the pipe is in the ground.
This online map showing where the pipes are underground is one of the changes as a result of last year's Senate Bill 181, the oil and gas reform legislation. Knowing what's between those dots, the wells, is something Erin Martinez has pushed for.
The public has a right to know what is in the ground in and around where they choose to live.
She's pushed for it since her home exploded in 2017. She survived. Her husband and brother were killed. The cause of the blast, an improperly abandoned flow line severed during construction. Abandoned flow lines won't be found on this map if they're not known, and you'll notice not every dot is connected yet.
We have, I think, well over 100,000 segments now on our maps. And we have about 40% of the forms that have been submitted so far still in process.
Oil and gas companies have until December to provide the state the actual location to plot on the map. So how do you use it? First, search COGCC Interactive Map. Click here. Then, don't get overwhelmed. On the left, check the box for flow lines. You can either type an address in or use this Zoom to Rectangle button. Draw a box to zoom in. On the bottom left, you can turn on the most recent satellite imagery. Move around using this hand icon. You can also use the arrow and hover your cursor over a flow line to see who operates it and what flows through it.
That's a lot to take in. We've got a step-by-step online, but more importantly, I need to tell you that using this database, Kyle, does not replace calling 811 when you want to dig in the ground. This is completely separate. You still have to call 811. Don't replace it with this.
Yeah, I don't know, Jane. It looks like it's north of the house. What do you think? No. Don't play that game. Be safe, people.
And if you want a closer look, you can only go so close online. If you want to know exactly where it is near your house, you're going to have to go in person to the state office or possibly your county once they do agree to some confidentiality. They don't want you reproducing things for security and safety reasons.
Sure. That makes sense. Knowing exactly down to the foot where a pipeline is might not be the best. All right. Thank you very much, Marshall. Fact. Drug prices keep rising. Fact. That makes a lot of Colorado's legislators angry. Fact. Anger has not amounted to a solution to rising drug prices. Though some legislators, they keep trying year after year. Today, a group of Democrats introduced a new plan to force drug companies to at least inform the state of their logic if they want to increase the cost of certain drugs by more than 10% year over year. Those legislators are using personal stories about drug costs to push their bill because they know so many of you have personal stories.
I would hold my EpiPen even as my throat swelled, trying to somehow avoid using it, because if I used it, I had to replace it, and that would have cost my grocery budget for an entire month.
One final fact for you. Drug companies are going to lobby against this, like they've done with similar efforts over the last few years. We'll stay on top of where this bill stands. Nearly 4 dozen inmates in Jefferson County will walk free tonight. Budget cuts caused the closure of part of the county jail, and that created overcrowding in the rest of it. 21 low-level offenders were released early over the weekend to free up bed space, and tonight 47 more get out early. Now, we don't yet know who, we don't know what they were in for. We can tell you that everyone who was released over the weekend was eligible for early release, having served at least half their sentence. So then that got us thinking about Arapahoe County, where the sheriff has also said they have overcrowding issues. Today, the head of the Detention Services Bureau told us they are far away from being forced into early releases. If you're hungry for every last little detail of President Trump's impeachment trial in the Senate, you are probably watching that instead of Next. We will give you the cliff notes on what the Coloradans involved are doing. So today, Democratic Representative Jason Crow got up there in his prominent role as a House impeachment manager. He's essentially prosecuting the case against the president. Crow talked about what withholding military aid to the Ukraine meant. He offered it from a soldier's perspective.
One of those memories was scavenging scrap metal on the streets of Baghdad in the summer of 2003 that we had to bolt onto the side of our trucks because we had no armor to protect against roadside bombs. So when we talk about troops not getting the equipment that they need when they need it, it's personal to me.
We are also watching to see whether Colorado's Republican Senator Cory Gardner at any point breaks ranks from President Trump and GOP leadership. Did not happen today. Gardner voted against allowing witnesses and voted against getting new evidence from the State Department. Getting your government, our government, to release public records, it can be like pulling teeth. But at least dental patients get some kind of numbing or sedation. With public records, everybody's wide awake to experience the hassle of trying to pry loose potentially important documents that you have the legal right to see. Now, Colorado is one of 5 states getting an attorney to help local journalists get you those records. Investigative reporter Jeremy Hahola explains.
When journalists get documents that are concealed, very often they reveal a problem that needs to be fixed. And we know from experience, sometimes public officials will not fix something unless you find out it's broken. This is why public records are so crucial. Every day we spend time in 9 Wants to Know getting documents from local governments. Sometimes it's a battle that ends up in court. Lawsuits are extremely rare because newsrooms would rather spend money to pay staff. A multi-million-dollar grant through the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press is paying for a full-time attorney to help defend local journalists in Colorado and to take on local governments in court. Local media had to hire attorneys to get access to Columbine shooting documents and to make sure the public had access to court records in the theater shooting. Public records are just that. They're public, and this will give reporters more power to take on government secrets for you.
Cycling advocates have been fighting a seemingly impossible battle in Denver. But what if they're winning? And a historic neighborhood imagines what change will look like. Spoiler alert, it will look like condos. Change always looks like condos. That's next.
Murky but mild in Denver today, and the mountains getting ready for another round of moderate to heavy snow. Temperatures running above average. Can you believe we hit 52 with the cloud cover? It did not feel that warm out there. We got another low pressure area sliding in from the northwest, so the gradient between the departing high and the incoming low going to create a bit of wind along the foothills tomorrow. There's another low we're tracking to the south. This one's going to be a mess for our neighbors in Nebraska and Kansas, where there are advisories for snow. These storms seem to skip right over the urban corridor, but the mountains will do very well with 3 to 6 inches of snow on north and west facing slopes. No advisories for travel yet. Lower elevations will stay dry with a bit of wind, and temperatures will trend a bit cooler, but that's after tomorrow. Mostly cloudy and 29 tonight. Tomorrow, some sunshine for a change, a high of 53. 40s for Thursday and Friday, close to 60 both Saturday and Sunday, and maybe, just maybe, some welcome snow for Denver. Maybe measurable snow by Tuesday afternoon.
Thank you, Kathy. Denver did not just wake up recently and decide to make it easier to bike around town without getting killed or injured. Consider just the fact that I said that on television. Advocates have changed the conversation around safe streets. They sat down with our Steve Steger today to talk about how far they've come and where they're headed next.
Rob Toffness is no squish on Twitter, a member of the Denver Bicycle Lobby. Tenley Williams advocates for safe streets, especially for families who ride. And Nicole McSpirit is a neighborhood captain on bike streets. We first wanted to know what these advocates think moved the needle and got the city listening to their pleas.
We're constantly saying the same things over and over again without getting much done. And now we're seeing some things in the plans, the city plans that are going on.
A couple of years ago, somebody I knew very well was killed on their bicycle. And then last year, a neighbor was killed on her bicycle. And when that happens, I can't stand silent, and I'm glad that the city can't either.
How do you improve that conversation between drivers and cyclists? Because right now it's really just adversarial.
For me, so I grew up like in a county, in Larimer County, and we drove to baseball and we drove to school, and you were in a car. And it wasn't until I had this experience of getting down here and getting on a bike that it was like a light bulb went off. I don't know if we could talk for hours, and I don't think you convince someone that's really hardcore about it. Honestly, if they get on a bike for a week, I think their perspective would change.
There have been a lot of really contentious public meetings about these issues, and while it's difficult and challenging, it has given people a place to actually talk through their perspective and have more nuanced conversation.
And this group isn't just talking to the city. They're saying our conversation as a whole needs to change.
You read all the articles and it's a car jumped a curb or a car hit, and it makes it sound like the car is autonomous, and they're not. There's someone behind the wheel. And I don't think it assigns blame to say a driver hit a cyclist. Someone was operating a vehicle and that's what happened. That's just a fact. But because we see that language about a car doing it so much, it removes that agency from the operator. And I think that's a little dangerous too.
The next YouTube channel has that full conversation, including where the advocates think the city is doing well and where it's falling short.
I guess you don't want it to change too much, but some change is good.
Change comes to a one-of-its-kind neighborhood in Denver. And a family stuck crawling in I-70 traffic found 5 hours worth of entertainment. A most Colorado thing. Next. Denver's Bonnie Brae neighborhood was designed to evoke the feel of a quaint Scottish village. I suppose even Scotland has condos now, and the initial concept plan to tear down the Bonnie Brae Tavern and the gift shop next door calls for them to be replaced by a massive 68,000 square foot building with retail space, residential space, restaurants, and parking. Now, this is not a done deal yet, but neighbors told our Mike Grady they are watching closely.
Okay. Do you like it on a cone or in a bowl?
Bonnie Brae ice cream slingers
Are you going to get some?
have been asking tough questions for over 70 years.
So many things to decide.
I haven't seen that many changes, to tell you the truth, which is a good thing.
Cindy Pilette is one of the shop's owners.
Yep, Philly.
Amy Sheridan's been coming here her whole life.
Oh, Bales.
It's a favorite spot to take her kiddos.
We love that it's a traditional ice cream shop.
A concept plan for the block across the street shows big changes that may be coming to the neighborhood.
The tavern and the dry cleaners, Carrie, and then Wish. That corner is going to be gone too.
Potentially making way for 68,000 square feet of housing, restaurants, and retail.
A little bit nervous about off-street parking for our customers.
And actually one of my thoughts was, okay, if there's not good parking, I'm not going to tell the kids that this is where the ice cream store is because we're just going to drive by.
More residents may mean more ice cream scooped.
We want to be good neighbors with our across-the-street neighbors.
More.
Amy hopes developers will keep the integrity of the area intact.
So it's really fun to have traditions to pass down to your kids that you used to do. And if it changes a lot, then you really can't pass on those stories, or they're hard for your kids to imagine.
As long as they keep the flavor of the neighborhood in mind in their development.
Billy, let me clean off your face.
We're looking forward to being good neighbors with them.
Okay, you're not even getting anything.
For next,
good job.
I'm Mike Grady.
You want to do your hand?
This development is not a surprise. If you watch next, you know we've been following the trail of paperwork on the Bonnie Brae Tavern for a while. The owner asked for a non-historic designation from the city. That allows for demolition. The neighbors could have stepped in to fight for the historic label, but nobody chose to do that. Hey, congratulations from the next family to the growing family of State Senator Brittany Peterson, a guest on this show. She made history over the weekend, becoming the first Colorado State Senator to have a baby while in office. The Democrat and her husband, Ian Silveri, our former political expert, welcomed a baby boy over the weekend. Davis James Silveri, born on Sunday. Dad tweeted today that Davis and Mom are doing amazingly well. There's nothing more Colorado than being stuck on I-70 for hours trying to get to or from the high country. We will salute a family's creativity and Larry Walker next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a fun way to pass the time in that bottomless pit of misery that is I-70 on a Friday night in January.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Oh! I went for rock. I went for rock. How'd you figure that out? Rock always wins.
Another victory for the near car over the far car. That is Brooke. Her mom Bonnie took video of their Rochambeau marathon with other people stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic going into the mountains on Friday. They were going all the way to Grand Junction, and they told us that it took more than 5 hours to get from Idaho Springs to the tunnel. Google Maps says that 25-mile stretch should take you less than 30 minutes. This was a whole family effort in the car to pass the time. Brooke's sister, Abby, held up a sign that asked the passing drivers if they wanted to play rock, paper, scissors, and then Brooke stepped in to finish the deal. We love your suggestions of how to spend the time driving up to the mountains or back, or if you just want to share something that's really Colorado, get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. Phil Hahn writes in, thanks for opening the show with Larry Walker. He was my favorite player growing up, and when I heard the news that he got into the Hall of Fame, it took me back to being 10 years old for a brief moment. Frank Gross writes in to say simply, roads are for automobiles. Okay, all right. Well, I hope when you take your automobile wherever you're going, Frank, that you have no occasion to cross it on foot, because I hope you, sir, stay safe. Andrea Crawford writes in tonight and says, hey, Kyle, we haven't heard much about the drones over Colorado lately. Are they gone? They're not gone, Andrea, but we just don't have a solid answer of what's going on. That and the fact that when the state sat down and really looked into the complaints, they found that most of the recent ones were people staring at stars and planets and planes. See you next time.